There are moments in life when we feel stuck. A problem at work that keeps repeating. A misunderstanding with a friend that refuses to resolve. A recurring habit we can't seem to break. In such times, our natural response is to either overthink or avoid. Both lead nowhere. But Dale Carnegie, a man who spent years studying human behavior, communication, and influence, suggested a simple and practical method, something he called the magic formula for solving problems. This formula is not based on abstract theory. It's based on direct human experience and observation. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe Cyclin's channel. We will get early access to new video and insights personal in spiritual growth. Now let's get started. Carnegie's approach to problems wasn't about finding immediate answers. It was about changing how we think about problems in the first place, and that begins with one simple idea: clarity. Most people don't define their problems clearly. They mix emotions with facts. They generalize. They assume. They blame. Carnegie observed that when people stop to define the exact nature of a problem without exaggeration or assumptions, they're already halfway to the solution. Let's take a simple example. Imagine you're not getting along with a coworker. Many people will say he's just difficult, or we don't get along. But Carnegie's method would require asking, what exactly happened? When did it start? What specific behavior is causing tension? Once you state it clearly, last week he dismissed my idea in a meeting and I felt disrespected, the problem becomes something specific and manageable. You're no longer reacting emotionally. You're dealing with something real. The next step in Carnegie's formula is gathering the facts. That may sound basic, but it's often skipped. We live in assumptions. We think we know what the other person meant. We think we know why they acted a certain way. But real solutions come from facts, not guesses. Carnegie advised people to write down everything they know for certain about the situation. What has happened? Who was involved? What were the circumstances? By collecting facts, you remove the fog of emotion and begin to see clearly. In psychology, this is a process we often call cognitive restructuring. You replace irrational thoughts with rational ones. For example, let's say you feel like your manager dislikes you. Instead of holding on to that belief, ask yourself, what concrete evidence do I have? What events support this idea? And equally, what events contradict it? This process often shows that what we believe emotionally isn't always backed by facts. After clarifying the problem and collecting the facts, Carnegie suggested analyzing the facts honestly, not defending our position, not trying to justify ourselves, but looking at what is true, even if it's uncomfortable. This is where the real shift begins. Carnegie said that people who solve problems effectively are willing to ask themselves hard questions. What part did I play in this issue? Could I have acted differently? Is my approach helping or making things worse? Let's apply this to another situation: financial stress. Many people feel overwhelmed when money gets tight. They start to panic or blame external factors. Carnegie would suggest writing down exactly what the financial issue is. How much debt is there? What are the sources of income? What are the fixed and flexible expenses? Once the facts are clear, people often realize the situation isn't as hopeless as they believed. Solutions begin to emerge naturally once the problem is honestly defined. Now comes the final step in Carnegie's formula: coming to a decision and acting on it. This may seem obvious, but most people don't take this step. They get caught in a loop of thinking without ever deciding. Carnegie argued that once you've gathered and analyzed the facts, you must choose a course of action, no matter how small, and move forward. Even a flawed decision is better than indefinite worry. He believed that inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. This is supported by psychological research on anxiety. When we delay action, our brain keeps interpreting the problem as a threat. When we take even small steps, our brain begins to relax because it feels like we're regaining control. That's why Carnegie's method is so powerful, not because it solves problems instantly, but because it restores the feeling of control. There's another important insight Carnegie emphasized. Most worries are based on things that either never happen or are not as bad as we fear. In his work with thousands of people, he found that when people applied his formula, define the problem, gather facts, analyze them honestly, decide and act, many of their problems either disappeared or became manageable, and perhaps even more importantly, their emotional burden lightened. Let's return to our earlier example of the workplace conflict. After clearly defining the problem, gathering the facts, and analyzing your role, you may decide to have a calm and private conversation with the coworker. You explain how you felt, you ask for their perspective, and you work toward understanding. Maybe they didn't intend harm. Maybe they were under pressure themselves. Even if nothing changes instantly, the act of addressing the issue directly gives you peace. You're no longer avoiding it. You're engaging with it. This same formula can be applied to personal challenges, whether it's procrastination, relationship issues, or making life decisions. Let's say you want to switch careers but feel stuck. You're uncertain about what to do. Carnegie would say, write down the exact problem. I want to change my career, but I don't know where to start. Then collect facts. What skills do you have? What industries are hiring? What are your financial needs? What training would you need? Then analyze. Are you holding back because of fear or because of lack of preparation? Once that's clear, make a decision. Even if it's small, like signing up for a course or talking to someone in the field, it's progress. What Carnegie offered wasn't magic in the sense of a quick fix. It was magic in the sense that it worked consistently, because it wasn't about changing the outside world. It was about changing how we engage with it. His magic formula is ultimately a way of thinking, a structured process to replace confusion with clarity, fear with facts, and paralysis with progress. Another strength of this approach is that it's teachable and repeatable. Once you go through the steps a few times, it becomes part of how you approach everything. A disagreement with your partner, a difficult decision about your future, even a small daily stressor. You begin to say, what's really happening here? What are the facts? What options do I have? What's the next step? And slowly you stop feeling overwhelmed by life's problems because you've trained your mind to respond with logic instead of panic. There's a deep psychological reason this method works. Our brains are pattern-seeking machines. When we face uncertainty or complexity, the brain responds with anxiety. But when you give the brain a structure, a series of steps, it feels safer. It begins to cooperate. That's why Carnegie's method reduces worry. It replaces mental chaos with order. It doesn't avoid the problem. It meets it with reason. In the end, Carnegie believed that most people aren't taught how to solve problems. They're taught how to memorize solutions. But real life doesn't give you ready-made answers. It gives you situations that need to be broken down and understood. His method empowers people not just to solve one problem, but to become better problem solvers in general. So if you're facing something difficult, whether it's emotional, professional, or personal, try Carnegie's formula. Write down the problem, get the facts, analyze them, make a decision, act on it. You'll discover that most of the fear you feel is tied to uncertainty, not the problem itself. And when the uncertainty goes away, you begin to think clearly. You begin to trust yourself more. This doesn't mean everything will always go perfectly, but it means you'll be in control of your response. You won't be stuck. You'll be moving. And that's where growth begins. That's the real power of Dale Carnegie's magic formula. Not in giving us answers, but in showing us how to find them again and again.